The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 2, Reading and Viewing, and addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to recognize the socio-political and cultural background of texts. Learners should be able to explain how background and setting, milieu, relate to character and/or theme. In this series, we've been exploring the rich history of South African theatre, and we've found out a bit about the roles that various people play in running a theatre and putting on a play. In this lesson, we'll take a closer look at one of South Africa's theatre successes, James Ngcobo's play, The Suitcase. We'll learn where this play is set, and we'll discuss the social and political context of the play and how this is shown on stage. We are using The Suitcase as an example of a play, but you'll be able to apply what you learn about setting and context to other plays that you might watch or study. Here are the outcomes for this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the social and political context of the play, The Suitcase, describe the setting of the suitcase, explain how the context of a play is related to the way the story unfolds. Before we go into detail about the context and setting of the play, let's watch an outline or synopsis of the story of The Suitcase. As you watch the synopsis, see if you can work out where and when this play was set. The play starts with Luvuyo, a young man, asking Namhla, his mother, about his deceased father, Timi. Namhla tells him the story of how she and Timi left the village to go to the city. The honest and innocent couple, Namhla and Timi, are both very positive to start off with. They have dreams and aspirations and are completely in love. Along the way, we discover that Namhla is pregnant, and this increases Timi's sense of responsibility to provide for his family. As the weeks go by, Timi isn't able to find any work, and their situation eventually becomes very desperate. Their savings run out and they owe money to their landlord. One day, Timi finds a suitcase on the bus and, in the hope that it contains something valuable, he decides to take a desperate chance and steals the suitcase. The police catch him, and it is revealed that there is a dead baby in the suitcase. He and Namhla never see each other again, as Timi is arrested and later dies in prison. Namhla goes back to the village, has the baby and raises him by herself. The last scene of the play takes us back to the scene that we saw at the start of the play. Luvuyo pays tribute to his father as he now knows more about him and how he really tried to be a good husband and father. Well, that is the basic story of The Suitcase. What clues were given about the time period and location in which the story was set? Maybe you picked up that the play is set in two separate locations, one in a rural village, the other in an urban city. You may have worked this out because we saw Namhla and Timi arriving in the city with their belongings, but we also saw Luvuyo participating in traditional ceremonies which we associate with rural life. Maybe you also noticed that the story happened a number of years ago because of the clothes that the actors were wearing are old-fashioned. Where and when the play is set is also part of the context. The context of a story is the social and political environment or set of circumstances that surround the story and give it meaning. Understanding the context and setting of a play is important to understanding the story and why characters behave in the way that they do. In other words, knowing about the context and setting will help the audience to understand the themes and messages in the play. In our example, the play The Suitcase was set in the 1950s. During apartheid, many people had no choice over where to live, and it was difficult for many people to move between different areas of the country or find employment. Watch this scene from the play and see what clues it gives about the context of the play.
You see, I've been here 7 years. It's not easy. First, you must have your pass right and you carry it with you all the time. Have it handy in your pocket, so when the right time comes and the authorities want to know whether you are allowed to be here, you just pull it out with ease. Don't worry, we'll catch up, we all have to. Second thing is, always have your eyes and ears wide open. This place, we walk side by side with trouble every day. It's not the Tsotsis, it's the police. Those blackjacks, they are worse. You can't win with them. They always want something from you. If they find your papers are fine, then they want a little cold drink. They just say, hey, talk to me or else. That's what I've been through here. 7 years of pure hell. Like that man in the Bible who worked 7 years just to get a wife. What was his name? This place is like a huge mountain. You keep climbing all the time.
This scene reminds us that during the apartheid era, black people were forced to carry passes and that their movements between rural and urban areas were strictly controlled. How does knowing about the context help us to understand what the character is saying? This context helps us understand why the landlord tells Timi to keep his pass in his pocket. He needs to have it ready to display to the police. We also understand that many of the police of the time were corrupt and would openly demand bribes. Timi is therefore warned about policemen who may want a little cool drink. In a way, because we understand the context of past laws during the apartheid era, we are more knowledgeable than Timi, who seems quite naive and who needs to catch up. But knowing about the 1950s is only one aspect of the context. We also need to consider the setting of the play. Although the playwright and director, James Namhla, kept the original time period of the 1950s used in the original story, he decided to change the location and set his play in Mkhombane, Durban, rather than Sophiatown, Johannesburg. Let's hear from James why he chose Mkhombane as his location.
I felt there's been a lot of things written about Sophiatown, and there's always a thing when people always think that the black experience of the 50s can only be seen through the eyes of Sophiatown. And so immediately I thought I'm gonna just relocate the story. Secondly, I'm not from Joburg, I'm from Durban. I've been living in Joburg for like almost 10 years now. I'm still a Durbanite in my heart and I'll always be. And Mkhombane is an equivalent of Sophiatown. It is exactly what Sophiatown was. It was a place of displaced people that were put by the system that came from the villages to Durban to look for work when the harbour was growing bigger and bigger. And also I've always believed that to write about something that you don't know is, I don't know, it doesn't work for me.
But the play is not only set in Durban's Mkhombane. It is also partly set in a rural village. James told us why he decided to include this location in the script.
In adapting it, I wanted to have like a two-dimensional thing because I've always been fascinated by people that leave villages with dreams of utopia to come to the city and look for work. I mean, I spoke to people. The first time I did this play was in Cape Town. The first run was in Cape Town, and then it came to Joburg. And I met people who said, why do you think we should watch an old story about some man in the 50s who found a suitcase in the past in 2006 in South Africa? And I said to them, if you read the story and look at what is happening in this country, there's nothing old. It might be a period piece because Ntati Mphatlele wrote it in the 50s, but if you look at what has happened to our people, to the sort of like the history of the country, and not a lot has changed.
What makes the two different settings work so well in the play is that they form a strong contrast between rural and urban life and rural and urban values. And this contrast helps us understand why Timi and Namhla battled to adapt to urban life. Listen to how Namhla describes the city and how this compares to the rural village.
But the thing about Mkhombane, it didn't really matter where you were. Nuclear, Maize Knot, Jeepakot, Tin Town, Kabazini, Jafet. It all just looked the same. I used to stand out there every morning, just to take the day in as it begins. Funny thing about that place is how grey it was. Everywhere you looked, there was just this rainbow of grey. People greet you with their grey smiles, grey conversations, kids playing and singing in old broken down cars with their grey faces. Stuff around them that was once colourful eventually became grey, and everybody wore that grey and walked with it, day in, day out. Standing out there, my mind would take me back to the village. It's colourful, the real smell of the earth, the people. Our story did not come out of that greyness. No, it started very simply. Just your colourful boy meets girl story. But like everything else, time rewrote it. Going to the city was the beginning of a whole new chapter.
Namhla talks about the city being the same and grey, while she describes the village as being colourful and real. She also mentions that in the city, stuff around there that was once colourful eventually became grey. Why do you think Namhla describes the city and village like this? By describing the city as being grey, we realize that it is no longer a magical place for Namhla. When she arrived, she was very optimistic about life in the city. But over time, her dreams have eroded and she is no longer that enchanted by city life. She longs for the rural area, which she now remembers as being a colourful place with the real smell of the earth and the people who she now misses. This contrasts sharply with the city which she described as being full of kids playing in old broken down cars and people with grey faces. From this, we understand the contrast between the village and the city. The village symbolizes everything good, nature and rich soil, growth and happiness, and even dreams. The urban environment of the city is grey, dead and desperate, a place where people's lives disintegrate. So from the beginning of the story, we understand the context and setting in which the story unfolds, and this helps us to better understand the story and its themes and messages. Of course, even if you didn't know about apartheid or village life or Mkumbani, you would still be able to understand the story. This is because many of the themes that it raises are universal. We can all understand the desperation that Timi experiences when he can't support his family, and the love that Namhla and Timi share for one another that was so great that they were able to leave their families behind to go off and start a new life together on their own. But even if the theme seems apparent, knowing the context will definitely help you to gain a deeper understanding of the play. So here's a tip. When you're reading a play in class or going to watch a play at the theatre, try to find out a bit about who wrote it, when it was written, and where the action was set. This will help you to understand the writer's attitudes, issues that were topical, and the social situation of the time. It will also open your imagination so that you can really get into the world of the story. Here's your task for today. Take a look at the following clip and then explain how understanding the context of the play helps in understanding Timi's reaction to Namhla.
Let me go out and look for work. It doesn't matter what. A domestic, a washerwoman, something. Our sages say even where there's no pot to boil, there should be fire.
If you think I'm gonna let you go out there and face the humiliation I deal with every day, then usagel.
I am still strong. I can't watch you go through this alone. This is no time for pride, Timi. Tomorrow I will go, and that's that.
In the previous lesson, we met some of the people who helped create a play, and in this lesson, we have learnt about when and where the Suitcase is set. Now in the next lesson, we will learn more about what goes on behind the scenes to help bring a play to life and give the audience a sense of the setting, context and atmosphere. Until then, goodbye.